There we go.
Dee,
Scran. Share
dee.
scran. Go to top.
Wait,
Yay!
is the game over?
For now, we're just gonna do the little events thingy quick.
Ooh,
And then we'll
minimize.
do the thing. I need
Okay.
some
Oh,
mods. Hmm?
I was only looking at one screen. I wasn't. Look at how low the mascot is doing the things. And we thought we'd give it a tragic backstory. Ah, shit.
Oh, he
Everyone
ended up being
wants
hopeful and
adorable thing.
sweet.
A tragic backstory.
Hey, man, we can get dark over here.
Oh no.
But a twisted kind of dark. We are like, what the hell?
This is pre-tragedy because he doesn't have those tears yet.
Oh, yeah,
We'll make him cry.
yeah. No! Leave
No!
Chase alone, he's a sweet bean.
We must protect the bee.
Must protect Fluffy Bean.
Keep watering the bee.
Hey, Tracy! Long time no see. You exist still? Tracy!
It's a
Never
myth.
mind, I
Tracy,
thought
you're
you were
embarrassing me.
It's a myth.
speaking to
This
the
isn't
wall
her.
here. Okay,
How come?
okay,
How
go.
come?
We're
Nah, nah.
gonna
How
obviously
come?
chat about the principles. So we're gonna look at the 12 principles. We're gonna look at how we can apply them. And then I just wanted to share some open source softwares that, if this does reach any newcomers to animation, then they've at least got some stuff to start learning with. And then we're just gonna do a little demo session and an animate along.
Gee.
Hey, there you are. Slightly delayed, thanks.
Lag.
I'm not my PC. I didn't expect you to greet me. I'm sorry.
How would I
Hi.
not greet you? I haven't seen you in ages.
Yeah.
Tisk tisk. I hope you're keeping good.
Mm, I am. How's everything?
Oh, it's hectic. I'll catch you up after this. Like, there's a lot happening.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So where do the principles come from? So obviously there's something to do with Disney. So the original animators that worked at Disney were called the Nine Old Men, and they were the core animation teams of many of their classic films. So two of the core animators, Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas, created the 12 principles of animation, making it an essential must-learn for all aspiring and working animators. The principles first appeared in their book, The Illusion of Life, from Disney Animation in 1981, but all of the Nine Old Men agreed that these principles had been part of their work since the 1930s. Animators at Disney have been subscribing to these principles ever since, and that's almost a century of these principles living and breathing behind every one of Disney's animated projects. So what exactly do the principles aim to do? Basically, they emulate life as we see it. It's the most realistic, simplified portrayal of the way elements physically interact with each other. And they've been designed to help you create the most realistic and believable kind of animation. So why do we need them? They serve as a means to reliably create an illusion of life. They are simplified methods to replicate realistic movement in a way that can be adapted and understood by entire crews. While there are hundreds of ways to do something, the principles act as a good frame of reference for you to ensure that maximum appeal and resonance from your animation comes out. Sorry, claiming. Okay, so what I mean by resonance is how does an animation resonate with you? Is there like a personal connection you make? Does it deal with a subject matter that's close to your heart, or does the character or whatever is on screen behave in a way that is very much recognizable to you? It's one of the biggest things. If you get your principles right, you create resonance with your audience, and that is what is centrally at the core of appeal. So as always, it's good to know the rules before breaking them. So there are 12 rules, as we've said. So we get squash and stretch, anticipation, staging, straight ahead and pose to pose, follow through and overlapping action, slow in, slow out, arcs, secondary action, timing, exaggeration, solid drawing, and appeal. So with timing, it's also sometimes called timing and spacing, but there is a distinction between the two, so we'll cover that when we get there. Okay, so here is a visual representation of everything that's happening. So you can see with squash and stretch, that's literally what it refers to, and this just helps us inform our weight a little bit. There's anticipation as the little cube gets ready to flop. Staging is just about where the cube is presented on stage. Straight ahead and pose to pose refers to how shape will change depending on your approach. Follow through and overlapping action. This is often when speed and inertia is applied. Slow in and slow out refers to how we build energy up. Arcs is the natural pivoting movement we see around us, and that applies to everything, even square objects. If they fall over, they form an arc. Secondary actions, so little added bits of information to make the overall acting more appealing. Timing and spacing, how we can visually readjust the timing without actually affecting, the duration of what we're seeing. Exaggeration, how far can we push something to make it appealing? Solid drawing refers to keeping your drawings consistent. This is very important for your volumes. And then appeal, how can we add charisma? Okay, so squash and stretch informs how we perceive weight, volume, speed, and the density of an object. This principle can be observed acting out in real life when we're looking at a piece of slow motion footage. Although we don't usually see these subtle actions playing out in real life, we do register it on a subconscious level, which is why they need to be there. Squash and stretch in animation is an exaggeration of what we find in our day-to-day lives and adds clarity and energy to an action. So there's some slow-mo footage down there of a guy getting punched, and you can see just how much a human face can deform with the right amount of pressure. That ear is incredibly weird. Cool. Then you get anticipation. So this is the action that a character does to prepare for the main action. Anticipation draws our eyes appropriately through the movement, so we can also observe the anticipation in real life. It's the small actions that happen between recognition, decision, and reaction. So basically, to simplify it down, anticipation is the act of getting ready to react to something. So you can see the guy in the red shirt there. His fist doesn't go straight into the snowman. He draws it all the way back first. So we register that fist a lot more clearly because he draws it in the opposite direction first, and then he gets more energy into his punch that way. Okay. The next principle we can have a look at is called staging. In animation specifically, this refers to the sequence of events playing out on screen so that they have enough time to be registered and understood by the audience. In film, staging is also used to keep a scene flowing smoothly and gives the audience a clear visual path to follow throughout the scene. So the shot with Cruella de Vil, what we mean by staging is not everything is happening at once. We need to see, okay, first she's getting angry, then she throws the bottle explodes, and we see her reaction. It's not all happening at the same time. It's happening very close to each other, but because there's just that little bit of offset from all the actions happening, we can actually see everything happening in a believable time. Same over here. Our scene starts off really even, and we're all focused on the action happening here, the conversation between these guys. But then our attention is drawn to this one random person falling down into the middle of the scene. What also adds to it is that the way that people pull back so that we can see the action nice and clearly. There's no confusion on what's just happened. Okay, you must let me know if I must slow down, or if you guys want to jump in, go for it. Okay, cool. So straight ahead and pose to pose. So these are two different approaches you can use for actually animating. So most people start off straight ahead, and it's a really good, it's a workable method, but it does have some drawbacks. So straight ahead refers to starting with one drawing, then drawing the next and the next until you've completed your animation. The reason that this can be a tricky one to work with is because you're going straight ahead, you actually lose track of your volume or your scale of whatever you're drawing. So things can actually get really warped and out of shape very quickly. For this reason, pose-to-pose exists. So pose-to-pose refers to when you plan out the whole shot using your key poses, and it gives an overall idea of the action you want to animate before filling in the missing frames. Cool. So which of these is pose-to-pose and which of these is like keyed out?
The pose to pose is definitely the one with the fixed animation, the lava, and then the one that's keyed out is the demon thing.
Yeah, the demon's keyed out and the lava is straight ahead. So straight ahead is really, really best for natural elements because of how unpredictable it is. So it's good for fire, water, lava, you can see here as well. It's mostly used in effects. Even the smoke you see here, that is straight ahead. But the hands and anything that requires a solid form that needs to remain consistent would have to be pose to pose. Okay, the next thing we're going to have a look at is follow through. So in this principle, that refers to the parts of the body or part of a movement of another part, so the leading one, that has a bit of a delay. So think of when you see a large person shouting, for example, their chin would wobble differently to their face. Or if you have a squirrel jumping from branch to branch, there is a bit of follow through on their tails as well. So it adds to your sensation of weight, but it also adds an additional interesting bit of movement. There's an important distinction though with follow through and overlapping action, as well as secondary action, because these three get confused quite often. So these two over here that you see, follow through and overlapping action, are unconscious. They're not part of a character trait in any way. They can add interest to your shot, but it's not driven by any thought. We'll clarify that when we actually get to secondary action. Cool, then overlapping action is the principle that some parts have different timing or speed and compared to other parts. So they overlap the main action. So you can see the main action is our big bouncing ball, and then our overlapping action is the bounce on this. So someone running with like a bun in their hair, or I don't know, Pamela Anderson on the beach, I guess, would be a good example. Just to come back, follow through, to clarify a bit more why this is a distinction. So follow through is specifically aimed at when your object comes to a stop or changes direction, there is still energy carrying through in smaller objects that are attached to it. So think about if you wear clothes with really big sleeves and you walk around. Your hands and your arms move in one direction, and if they change direction, then your sleeves need to still catch up because they're different weights. So you can see an example of that over here. So we've got both at play. We've got follow through on his sleeve. It's very, very subtle. And then overlapping action on the hair. Okay. The next thing we'll chat about is slow in and slow out. So this is the idea that every natural movement starts slow, gains speed, and then slows down before coming to a complete stop. This is because it takes time to build up and reduce energy in real life. If your intention is to create something that feels a little more unnatural, you would use slow in and slow out less. It would still be there though. Okay, so you can see an example over here. So on the timeline here, there is different spacing being given. It's the same timing, meaning this length is likely only 1 second long, but the actual spacing is changing quite a bit. So both shots 1 second long, but because this has got even spacing, it feels like it's moving a lot slower. Whereas if we slow in and then slow out, this feels like it has a lot more energy attached to it. Cool. Then we have arcs. So, yeah.
Cheating. Is slow in, slow out also based on like how the objects what's this the object's material would react. I'm just thinking in terms of something like friction
Mm-hmm.
to create like a sense of friction. Um, a let me say like a very heavy ball,
Mm-hmm.
like rolling it will take like extra energy, and then the moment it starts gaining momentum, it moves quickly, and then it slows down. As to a ball where you can actually you can place more energy at like contact point,
Mm-hmm.
then like it will shoot through instantly.
So,
Like yeah,
I
yeah,
understand what you mean. Like, it does have an impact what substance you're trying to imply.
yeah.
But regardless of, if you're pushing a cube like we see over here or shooting a bullet, there is no going from 0 to, an insane amount of speed with no time in between.
Okay.
The switch is just too quick. So there will always be a slow in and a slow out regardless. It's entropy. It's the physics, what do you call it? The physical principle of entropy, that all things that have energy will eventually lose energy.
All right, makes sense.
Cool. Another thing we can chat about is arcs. So this principle refers to how everything in nature moves in an arc. Movements that don't follow an arc feel robotic and unnatural. So even a cube, as I've said, a shape made of only 90-degree angles, follows an arc if it falls over, because it's pivoting on a corner or whatever it is. So this is an incredibly important fundamental to get right. It's a handy tool for keeping proportion. And if you notice, for example, a character's waving arm moving in a straight line, the arm is warping in and out of proportion. So we'll find examples of that in a second. Or we'll actually probably work with arcs in the demo. Cool. So now we come to secondary action. So again, follow through and overlapping action often get confused for this. Secondary action is adding a little more detailed information about the character. It requires some level of thought. And what I mean by that is it shows us that the character is processing something in their mind. So you can see Pacha over here. He's supposed to give CPR. That's the main action. That's what he should be doing. But you can see very clearly he doesn't feel really good about this. He first starts by looking around, really anxiously. He wipes his shirt. He has to take a deep breath, rub his hands, very carefully open the mouth, and then he's revolted. So all of these little additional actions and bits of acting you've added to the character add so much more, and they really tell us what's going on in their head. So another, this is also sometimes called, activity for acting. What's his name? It's called acting for animators. I forget the author's name. I've got the book. I'll find it and I'll post it. But basically, to add information to your character, even when they're not doing anything, you give them what's called activity. So if you look around at people, for example, just standing, at a bus stop, if there's a man talking to a woman and she's looking at him, but you see her twirling her fingers, or maybe she's crossing her arms slowly and starting to move away, it can tell you she's feeling uncomfortable. It's not the main action, but it's adding little details that give more information about the person themselves. Can the slow in and slow out be considered as a way to create slow-mo shots? That will, so it will have an influence there. That principle will be at play, but that will come in more at timing and spacing. So we'll get to that one soon, and we'll work with that in the demo as well, I think. Okay, cool. And then the second clip over here, this is from The Cobbler and the Thief. And this is this little witch that needs to go run somewhere. But you can see she's kind of kooky. She's got a lot going on. She has to get ready for her run, stretch, build her energy up. And then there's a lot of additional action added that tells you she's really not all that right in the head, even though the action should just be running. That's the main point of the movement here. Okay, so follow through and overlapping action, it's unintentional, it's just physics acting on a shape or on a character or on an object. But secondary action has thought behind it, even if it's unconscious thought. Okay, here we go, timing and spacing, and I absolutely love this. This killed me. So timing and spacing refers to the number of drawings between each frame. The fewer frames between drawings, then the faster the action will read. The more there are, then the slower the action will read. So that answers your question there, Trickster. If you want to create a slow-mo shot, you'll add a ton of drawings in between. So how many images we arrange on a timeline, as well as the physical distance on the paper between our drawings, will determine how smooth or janky the final animation ends up being. So below is an example of very, very bad timing and spacing. When someone walks towards us, especially so close, it feels like they should be moving at a much faster speed. But because the animators wanted to keep him in scene long enough to say his words, it feels like he's taking a really small baby steps. So it's literally just a bad timing. Cool. The next thing we want to chat about is exaggeration. So exaggerating a pose, exaggerated poses, not to make the action look ridiculous, but rather to make them feel convincing. If your character is sad, make them look depressed. If they're happy, make them ecstatic. We use this in animation to perfectly mimic reality. We use this as animation that perfectly mimics reality, tends to look dull and unappealing. So if it's rotoscoped, it just looks like traced footage. But if we add a bit more to it, bring the flavor a bit, it starts to make things a little more interesting and actually makes it feel a little more believable. I think one of the best examples is there is a short film. I'm going to drop the title in general chat because the title is very strange. That is the title of the film. It's brackets with 2 O's in the middle. And it's about the sensation of having a runny nose with a cold. We can actually have a look at that afterwards. It's only like 6 minutes long, I think. Okay, so actions and reactions tend to be the go-to. However, one can exaggerate in many other ways. For example, you can make a meal look exaggerated by making the color a lot more appealing, making everything really bright, textured, clean. You can make a room feel very dangerous by exaggerating the angles in the building. So exaggeration is not just about the movement, but it's also about the actual setting you're putting everything in. Like very often you'll see if a character comes to a cliff, the cliff will suddenly get super, super high up. I think Wile E. Coyote does this the most, where it will just exaggerate how high up we are, and it really adds to the stakes. So I think one of the best and worst feeling bits of exaggeration was this episode in SpongeBob. The fucking Splinter. I don't know if anyone remembers this episode, but it was scarring because that Splinter just got more and more ridiculous for the whole episode. Cool. The next thing we'll chat about is solid drawings. So this refers to keeping a set level of consistency in the volume. When we say volume, I always use the example of, think of a ball of Play-Doh or press stick. You can change the shape as much as you like, but it will still weigh the same. Unless you actually cut it up, that Play-Doh ball will be consistently, and that is what volume is. It's how we maintain that weight of something, even if we're stretching it and squashing it. Sorry, Shannon. So this is the very reason that model sheets and expression sheets are created, is to ensure that we keep volume consistent. So solid drawing takes into consideration three-dimensionality of a scene, so it does not just apply to staying on model, but rather keeping the distances, angles, and overall look believable and solid in appearance. Okay, so Sparse Studios has got some gorgeous examples here. I've used a lot of theirs because I just love how their stuff plays through. Real quick over here, this spine of the dragon, what would you call that, like, fabric, but what's happening there? Hello, Gary.
Isn't that a follow through?
Overlapping?
That's
Oh, no.
overlapping action. The tail is follow
Overlap.
through, though.
Oh, okay.
You see,
See,
the
I don't.
difference?
No. I always confuse the two.
So overlapping is literally, it's just bouncing here on top of the body. The follow through is following its own path. So this is all following with the body. There's follow through on this beard as well. So it has to carry on the movement and then be pulled all the way back. Oops. Okay. Cool. Over here we've got some more solid drawing. You can see how well the character's body turns. It feels really consistent. This is really, really well done. Especially for something like a chair, or, you know, something that has to turn. It's very easy to spot inconsistency when something turns around. Okay, and then we come to appeal. So in a cartoon, characters correspond to what would be called charisma in an actor. A character who is appealing is not necessarily sympathetic. Villains or monsters can also be very appealing. The important thing is that the viewer feels the character is real and interesting. There are several tricks for making a character connect better with the audience. For likable characters, we make use of shape language, so a more symmetrical kind of face or a particularly soft face tends to be effective. A complicated or hard to read face will lack appeal or captivation if the composition or pose of the character becomes too muddled. So Hades is a really good balance of everything. He has got a few round angles. He's made up of mostly sharp things, but because it's also so symmetrical, it doesn't at any point really get all that confusing. You know exactly what you're looking at. And then we've got some animation by Baxter for Adventure Time, and this is just so cute. Okay. My tablet is throwing a tantrum again. Okay guys, you want to do some demos? What are we gonna do? Now's the time to chat again if you want to chat.
Not the ball, please. I've done it too often.
I think Trickster might want to know about a ball though.
Oh, sure, yeah. No, fair enough.
What were you going to say, Makitsi?
Sorry.
No, the flower sack ones, they dope. Especially like the climbing object one. I think I've tried the heavy object one.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I think demo 4 that'd be cool.
Okay, so demo 4. I'm getting an idea now. I think it could be funny. I don't know. To take it and just actually build into a scene a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, if we have a little flour sack climbing onto a ball as if it is like a rodeo bull.
Rodeo bull. Okay.
You know, like those bulls that try to kick you off?
Oh, okay.
But it's a ball.
So it's bouncing ball and flower sack.
Yeah. Combine the two.
Okay.
I don't know. Or we could have the flour sack be the bull. I don't know.
It's one flower sack riding another flower sack.
That could lead interesting places. Oh my gosh.
Get off my back, you asshole.
So I don't know if you guys want to draw with me. So just for those, because this is for mainly newcomers, so some free open source software that you can use. I'm going to be making use of OpenToons today. You also get Pencil 2D and Synfig. And then if you're going to reference footage, which I highly recommend you do, there's another software called Keyframe MP, which allows you to scroll through videos frame by frame, and it will hold the window open over your stuff so that you can actually have it, you know, stay on top at all times. And then I've also just linked a video for another explanation of the 12 principles that will probably do a lot more justice than that than what I just did. Cool. And then also just wanted to chat real quick about exercises and how to improve. So a good place to start is just analyze animation. Find a 3 to 5 second clip you like, and see if you can pinpoint arcs and what principles are in play. The best form of learning is to become hyper observant. Another thing you can do is called animating gesture. So you can pull up like a YouTube video and then draw every third or so frame until you actually have movement happening. So this helps your solid drawing and your sense of timing. Another thing you can do, which I do with my own interns, is animating pre-made thumbnails. So find a show you like, see if you can find their pencil tests and their thumbnails, and use that. So what is nice about it is, because the drawing is already done, you don't need to worry about making that look good. It's more about figuring out, is the timing reading well, and once you've got the timing down, what else can I add to make the shot read? Maketsi and Kelo, I'm sure you guys can, talk about that if you want to at all. And then there's also a lesson resource that I've linked over here that has a ton of exercises that you can try out for yourself. Cool. And that's it.
Can I add a open source option?
Yeah.
On Blender, they have